type of written or like video response to some of the claims, Jamie. I think you can probably speak to more of that. There were some video excerpts from
Oh,
one of
that
the,
was Jamie Cooper was on because she's
yeah.
undergone some scrutiny for her connection to Sensi, which has some MCMA advertisers.
Yeah, so that's been the action this week. They've kind of bowed out or dodged the bullet
There
on.
was a woman who came on there who was a former employee of a common citizen cultivation operation.
Yeah, I
And
saw
of
her.
course, we have no way of confirming everything that she said. She came out and she's, just talking about it seems genuine, but there is no way of confirming. But what did come across uh, was kind of the what we assume, what we talk about a lot, was the just lack of understanding of how this generally works. And she described all these like common corporate practices, a lot of turnover, and this is in a grow, not
Yeah.
great condition, but a lot of stuff that just seems more naive of how to really make a great, cultivation operation work, and that type that came through. I don't know exactly what was true and what wasn't because
All right.
we have no way of
But
verifying, but that kind of came across to me.
Not able
I
to
really
verify
think
what?
everything that she said about from the conditions of working inside of the grow facility.
But her position was that it was.
I don't think she was saying anything positive.
A
Doesn't
lot of
sound
she was
like.
shift
saying
workers,
that
a
it
lot of
was,
turnover,
yeah.
a lot of corporate kind of conditions.
And
A lot,
it didn't matter if it had mold. The remediation was just a kind of like a thing that you expected to do. It was no big whoop. Nobody addressed it. It
they had
was just like,
slime mold and they wanted to cut around the possible usable cannabis from around the outside of where it was infected and try to use as much of that as possible and stuff like that.
that's pretty much where I stopped listening. But bringing it back, now they're continuing that type of behavior on our Plant a Green Tree show because Jam extended his hand to
Well,
offer.
I mean, I guess I'll give them the shadow of the benefit of the doubt, if you will, that maybe things are just busy. I mean, it has only been a couple of days, but we haven't yet heard back from them, and it
And
would.
who is this?
We reached out to the MCMA.
Oh, okay. The actual or
Yeah,
manufacturer
Like
association
with
itself.
Linder,
Okay.
yeah.
asking for an interview with Steve Linder because we knew we'd be talking about this, and we'll be talking about it for the next couple of weeks. And I would reiterate to the MCMA that we would absolutely love to have you on the show to hear your perspective. That being said, I know we have very strong feelings, but one of the things that I heard on the podcast on MERS is that Steve Linder, who's their executive director, I believe. Is that right, Jamie?
I don't know exactly what his position is, but he's
Okay.
definitely their representative, the lobbyist representative of the
Yep.
organization.
They interviewed him there, and he had indicated that he hadn't been able to have a meaningful dialogue with caregivers. And I'm paraphrasing all of this. If you want to hear word for word what he said, please listen to the podcast. But
Yet they felt comfortable making policy on their behalf.
right, exactly. That he wasn't able to have a meaningful, and he gave a reason that the caregivers don't have a central association that he could engage with, and it's like, well, no shit. Like that's the way the program was designed to have independent caregivers. That was always the intent. So anyway, long story short, here's your meaningful chance, Steve Linder or anyone from the MCMA that might want to come on and give your side of the story. We would welcome the debate and the discussion.
Maybe we should actually listen to what he said and then comment on it ourselves.
I mean, we could, but I'm not sure of the legal ramifications of replaying the Mirrors podcast.
That's fine.
So.
Well, there's also the public testimony that they gave a couple
True.
weeks ago.
That's true. We
The
can.
committee can really make fun of some of that stuff.
I mean, we can. Let me.
And it would be funny if it wasn't so like
Sure. Well, I
compelling
think
to some fucking people for some reason.
I think that could be fun. So what we'll do, I guess, is we'll take a
Hold
quick,
on.
or no, we'll let Michael rant. And
No,
while
no,
I'm
no,
doing
no.
that, you're doing that, I'll cue it up.
I want to know what we're gonna. I want to know what
I'm gonna pull up the testimony
Okay, all
from
right.
the other day, and we can allow you.
We're gonna get
and
riled up.
the team to comment on it.
I want to comment on your paraphrasing of Steve Linder's response that there's no centralized caregivers and he's unable to find one to talk to.
Yeah.
This is what we would call in a new concept that I've been promoting, which is that there's an objective reality that we live in. Okay, there's not a subjective reality. Just because you think something is something you want to believe that's fine, but it is not an objective reality. Okay, and there's some truths that exist in an objective reality, which are if you've been established to have said something one day and on another day is something totally contradictory, you lose your credibility. You've been impeached, okay?
That's right.
So the reason why this whole 5301 gets pushed, and as we'll hear from the tape at the committee hearing, is because of all these evil caregivers that are so well known and just obviously causing all these problems and whatnot by their own dad or whatever. The idea that he can't find a caregiver to talk to or sit down with means that whomever it is that he's speaking of is not a caregiver. And that's the difference.
Well, of course.
There may be something that's identifiable with whatever he's talking about, but it's not caregivers. And it's not the MMA. That is not even close to orbit that this is really taking place. And this is some other stuff about activity that's always existed in the state of Michigan.
For 13 years.
Beyond 13 years. I'm saying what he is attempting to talk about is the quote unquote illicit selling of marijuana. That's what he is complaining about.
Yes.
The MRTMA provides a solution for that. The act itself is supposed to minimize illicit sales. That is not what caregivers are. Caregivers are 5 patients that they interact with and actually play a significant role in the patient's acquisition, dosing, and frequency of use, and methods of ingestion. I did see, so that's one thing. The second thing is this. Think about this. The article that we were going to read from here as we're queuing this shit up, and we can talk about some of the things that they said at the hearing, but the MCMA is encouraging its members to provide free or low-cost cannabis projects to the patients with severe or terminal illnesses. This is
pediatric patients.
Okay, but all right, this doesn't say things. So it's interesting because Steve Linder has to encourage his persons to do that in his organization, which means they're not doing it anyways, which means however long the MMFLA has been operating, that's not even a thought that's come on. Only now that he's under fire for trying to eviscerate the law does it come to their idea to think about or contemplate the actual end user.
Right.
Because the MMFLA certainly didn't. The people that were not contemplated were not just the caregivers being part of that system. Fine. You got your own new program and whatnot. Run with it. But at least recognize that the objective that you're seeking here is to provide cannabis to medical marijuana patients who have cards. Mm-hmm. And when you create this mechanism that is just ridiculous, and you got people that have to be encouraged by their membership organization to be empathetic to sick people and terminally ill people, and you got to have this from your membership organization, like the head of that entity doesn't know to do that, says a lot for what a failure they are. What a failure they are. This is embarrassing. This program has been going on, and they've been dominating it since 2017. And in October of 2021, the light bulb goes off that they should be
really want all these.
The light bulb goes off suggesting that they got to now be empathetic to patients. What have they been doing since then? So up to this time, being unempathetic and people are getting turned away. One of the most significant arguments, I think, for the patients is that it's too expensive. Now, some places give discounts and whatnot, but not enough. Also, the light bulb that went off, I think, at the end of the show last time, Jamie, which was, I kept harping on this. I'll try it again, see if it makes any sense this time. You know, since the MMFLA was enacted, at that time, there's 300,000 patients, about 50,000 caregivers. The numbers are down to 240 now. So 240, and it makes up about 20% of the entire market of cannabis sales, medical marijuana. And the trajectory where this is going is that it's going to be blended together into the recreational market. That business trends will tell you that the MRA wants to do that, which means fewer and fewer end user patient intentions are going to exist, and they become fewer and fewer along the way, to the extent that the MCMA has to suggest and encourage their members to provide free or low-cost cannabis to terminally ill people.
All right, we got them queued up. So do we want to take a break first, or do we want to just jump right into it?
I don't know. How's everybody feeling?
I think we need to take a break.
I'm feeling pissed off after that, Michael. You really hit home with that one.
There's more. Jim coming up. I was on a flow too. I was going to try to make my point. Let me see. So the point. Here's the one thing. So if
Jim might love the MCMA.
At 300,000 patients getting dropped to 240,000 patients, that the market that they're thriving on is 80 to 20, and it's going to be 100 to 0. There's no conscious, intention here of treating patients. In fact, you'd think that them being in control, them having the MMFLA, them running the tables in the market of how it's going, it's shrinking the patient output from these stores, and it'll be zero at some point. Now, that could be interpreted as ruining the patient's opportunities. And if we go to 100% recreational, not that any of them are doing this anyways, there's going to be no specific cannabis, methods of ingestion made for those specific patients relative to their specific diseases.
That's not necessarily true. I mean, a lot of places are going to want to accommodate those types of people, even if there is no particular medical program.
We hope, but sometimes it seems as if it might be cost prohibitive to do it on a smaller scale. I know that these places are probably cranking in some cash, not that most of it doesn't go to the government, but
Dollar bill.
Yeah. But I mean, some of this might be cost prohibitive because you're thinking about a cancer patient, let's say. We don't know how much oil they're going to consume, but it's certainly more than a gram, most likely, per day. So,
it's cost prohibitive under both programs right now. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely. But I'm just saying, to the point that was mentioned earlier, that you'd made mention to some folks that may take that on as a business expense. I agree with you. There may be some people out there, but it's just very cost prohibitive as you mentioned, not only now under adult use and medicinal use, and it's going to be cost prohibitive for the facilities to be able to continuously provide these services for patients that don't have the right access. That was my point.
Well, I'm not saying there aren't some, Jimmy, you're not disputing that the direction of the marketplace will be absorbed into the recreational at some point, right? There'll be no more.
There'll be one license and it won't be called medical.
Right.
That's true.
It'll be recreational adult use, and then it'll allow maybe for some other kind of things, right? But it's all going to be
maybe it could just be called marijuana. Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, it doesn't matter if it's, the issue is that if you don't have medical, under 21 can't obtain and
well, they're gonna. I'm sure they'll when they merge it,
they'll
accommodate that part.
But that's a problem, right? One of the reasons you need the medical is that for people under the age of 21 and All right. So, but the point I'm trying to make here is this: that the marketplace of being 80 to 20 is a reality. I mean, I give this other stat that I think I happen. So there's a, like if let me say it this way. So at one point, facilities were selling just medical marijuana,
Right.
and that was the. And there's a certain number of dollars that they were bringing in because of that, and there was only that dollar amount.
And it was significant.
It was significant. It was only that dollar amount compared to zero in the recreational column. And then the next year went by, and then the next year, and then recreational comes to play. So I'm saying, so just.
And now they're doing over $1 billion a year.
Who, the rec?
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying, so.
The whole market
So
is
just
over $1
think of
billion
like
a
one
year.
store. Let's use a number. Let's say one store makes $1 million in medical after year one, which is probably, whatever, 18, 19.
Yeah.
They get a recreational license. So that it would go like this. It would be like $1 million without rec, and then the first year of rec it'd go to like 600. So they're saying only 600,000 in sales, like that kind of ratio. Listen to what I'm saying. And in the rec column,
Medical went to 600.
Yes.
Okay, yes. All right.
year, and then it drops in the third year to 250 or something like that. Okay, those kind of numbers. So like the amount of total dollars spent there, which was 100% of it was, say it's
Medical at one
medical,
time.
which is still significant, making the whole thing the 800 whatever it is now like 250 in 2 years because of the rec. Now, what is the explanation for that? I mean, there's a lot of reasons externally, but assuming all things are the same. All things consistent, so to speak, there's an effect there. Now, maybe some people aren't renewing their cards, or maybe the pricing that's taking place are caused. But here's the other point I want to make. When at that 250, and I know this for a fact, if a retail facility made $250,000 in medical, where in 2020, where do you think that's where do you think that falls? Do you think that's like off the charts, high, low, middle, or what? I'm talking gross revenue of medical sales. Let's ask the crowd here. What do you think, Jim?
How much was it?
A facility that now has a rec and medical license. Their earnings in medical, the medical column, were $250,000.
That's just revenue.
Revenue. Well, I would say it's yes, sales.
Okay. Then it's very low.
You think it's very low, Jamie? What do you think? It's 2020. There's a lot of factors that you can think, but it's
there are. I mean, Detroit's all medical, for example. So, oh, you said if a place is both. I guess it depends on a couple of factors, but the rec stuff is dominant,
right?
And by far.
Well, I mean, I'm not asking you to reveal the numbers, but there's a similar columns, I'm sure, for a botanical company, which they, were selling only medical, and then they began, rec, and it, changed. I don't know.
I don't stay up on the actual numbers, but I do know that it's medical's very close to not being much of a factor.
Okay, that's my point. So here's what I know: the facility that made that grossed $250,000 in sales in medical to renew, they were in the tier 2 in the state. The state's renewal license they categorize. So 250 is the middle. That means there's stuff below. Which may be 0.
Yeah.
Okay, which they renew their license. They're in tier 3. They get the biggest discounted license. My only point is, this is across the state. That phenomenon of the renewal license is the intention.
Of course it is.
Okay, so does it mean there's fewer actual patients, or can they not afford to get it? And even if there's the idea that some stores are going to be discounting it, some stores are going to be. Maybe even encouraging it. We got, if you still have a card, whatever. There may be new rules about that. But moving in this direction is not because there is a compassionate heart that is being pulled in a certain direction. This is a marketplace that is driving this. This is a reality that when you go from 50-50 to 80-10, that it's going to be 100 to 0 at some point, whether we like it or not.
Sure.
Now, It is a the idea that the recreational absorbs the medical patients into something else is unempathetic. It is an abandonment to the concept of the patients.
Why?
Well, we'll probably include not having to pay the excise tax.
The tax is one thing. The second thing is this. Here's my point.
But we all know that will happen. Like, it only makes sense.
You mean they'll adjust it for the patients, the excise tax? They got
Yes.
to okay, maybe.
So
But
one of the things is also the
A lot of
testing
places already
criteria.
do, I'm
After
saying.
your thought. After your thought.
Well, I'm just going to say the thing that I was trying to get at is that it's not so much. The point I'm trying to make is there are things that are moving this in a certain direction. There's a wind that's blowing. There's a temperature that's causing this this thing that's going on, and it's not by, compassion and care for patients at all, and it's
Well, but I mean,
let me finish. It's pushing in a direction. It's there's more money over here, so we're going to cater to that, and there's fewer of these, which is maybe their own fault, or people don't feel the same way, and when I say not catering, I'm not talking just pricing. I'm talking about what a caregiver does, right? A caregiver is
yeah, but we're not talking about caregivers.
I'm saying to you what this does to the patient population. It's more expensive, and the offerings are not going to be for a group of people that in this marketplace is merely 240,000. That is not, the business of it does not make sense for an operator unless you are letting your heart and your empathy and desire, or you got a connection to, so for some reason you want to. But this, the business of cannabis, the economy of cannabis, the way that it's going, is not about, and has never been about, the end user patient's care or concern. Further, the I don't know, just to come into a Walmart and pick out your medical cannabis is just not appealing. I think I just have a problem. It misses all the points of what is what a patient should have an opportunity to do. And now it draws a need for like Amanda's entity where you're teaching and educating and but think about the patients who we way back when this was an option. They like I used to joke that. After someone, I used to do free consultations for patients after they get certified regarding the law. Why would they need that? But they needed it. So we, have a, hey, do you ever think it'd be, legal for you to, we joke a little bit. And then after that, they'd say, okay, where do I go? What do I do? How do I get what's a caregiver? Caregiver, where do I get my, so the point is though that those connections were made, they're developed, there's people putting people together, and the caregiver took on this role of educating, maybe some taught them to grow, whatever, and educated, whatever. But this is completely missed. The idea that a sick person's going to walk into one of these stores and get and feel comfortable. Maybe it's all about that, but it's not the setting of that one-on-one connection. Remember, the physicians that recommend cannabis do not and should not get involved with dosing frequency use. That's for the patient to decide themselves, unless they have a caregiver, right? And a lot of them don't have any idea where to go, how to start, or whatever. And I don't know that the employee that is going to make up. Not that there's anything wrong with them. A lot of them are passionate, loving of cannabis. Some of them used to be caregivers, etc.
Yeah.
But the corporate business model that drives this is not about. Is not going to be about that. It's going to be about pushing the other, 90% of the products that they have on the shelves, and
But wasn't that what the MMFLA did? It was the same thing. I guess that's my point.
The MMFLA did not. Here's my point I'm trying to make. The irony of what's taking place in the marketplace is that since the takeover, and there's a whole licensing thing. I'm not saying everyone's in the takeover scheme, but in conjunction with the Steve Linder advocacy and bills that are introduced, the patient population, says the MMFLA, is shrinking, number one.
Yes.
It's still expensive, and they haven't thought about the patients.
Right.
The direction this is going is to not have these stores really patient-directed friendly, and all the while they're destroying the patient community, numbers are shrinking. They're before the legislature trying to take out the caregivers.
Yes.
There's a good argument that the MMFLA has fucked over, without even the legislation, has done a lot of damage to the patient community. And let me
It has certainly changed the landscape.
let me give you a little evidence. The places where you go to get it, for the first time in the month of October, we hear that their organization is thinking about and encouraging their people to give cannabis to sick people for free. First time. So you're telling me that this idea of giving it away for free to sick people has been on their mind before?
It's
never
a
been.
reaction. I mean, we all know this.
I know, but the phenomena of it means that it's always been like this, and only because there's some pressure on them do they think to do this.
Right.
It's a business faking a medical program driven for profit off of patients.
Yes.
Okay, so we have all that.
Jamie,
All the
Is it easier to get product into the rec system, like through the metric? Is it easier for a product to enter metric through the adult use versus entering through the medical side based on testing criteria or anything that I'm not aware of?
I from what I understand, I don't really handle that stuff directly, but from what I understand, the testing criteria is not as restrictive as the medical, but it's it's still
the testing for
substantial.
the testing for the medical's a higher bar.
Other than that, the rest of it's pretty similar.
All right.
My understanding.
So
It would seem that in itself would be a driver for a business owner looking at only bottom line. Like you say, Michael, you're removing the human element. You're only looking at numbers at this point, right? So every person equates to a number and a value,
right,
instead of a real person.
And good business drives that. I mean, it's like law. Some types of law you can't sell a widget. You got to actually. You got to do a lot of different stuff that you maybe didn't do the last time you had a case. What I mean? There's variables.
Right.
It's not always the same, and you can't. It's just each person's got it. So it's like the endocannabinoid system, right? Everyone's is a little bit different, and in one peg doesn't fit in every hole. It doesn't work that way. And my point I'm making is this: the phenomena of the market and the phenomena of the lobbying and the direction of it is just bizarre. If you step back and look at it, like the patient group has gotten smaller. And there's no contemplation about encouraging them to come in here. Ultimately, they're going to, it's not really going to be focused on. There may be products for them. And at the same time, they're trying to get rid of the caregivers, which means like this. It's like, here you go. This is what's going to happen. I mean, the statement coming out of this is that, here, we're running the show here. We're taking out the caregivers, and you're going to have to buy our weed at our prices. And if you don't like it, that's all you got.
That's tough shit.
It's tough shit. And it's insulting. And the other point is this, that the whole caregiver, and this is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about whatever the people Steve Linder may be talking about are not the caregivers that I know, but the caregivers that took on the duty, responsibility, put their heads on the block to get chopped. And ultimately, and also, let's not forget, what else do they do? What else do the caregivers do? As much as they're hated, and these are the caregivers that whether they're talking about the same person or not, clearly,
well, they funded the state system for
they
several months.
They saved the entire program. Had it not been there, it would have fallen apart. The shops on the other end would have fallen apart. They would not have operated. You would have all the Rule 19 shops in receivership right now. Okay, and the reason why that was allowed to take place was to prevent a state of emergency. It's like they were the Coast Guard that came in and saved everyone when Lake Michigan, had a tsunami or something like that.
Giving everybody their FEMA packets with all of their J's and their little spoon pipes and their lighters, or those matches that are waterproof. That's what they all got.
All right, so here's my final point. The caregiver, unequivocally, one of their obligations, and this comes out of the case law. It's not in the statute, but comes out of the Hardwick-Tuttle. Because the doctor cannot and should not be doing anything other than signing the recommendation, certifying them for possible that it's their belief that it's therapeutic competitive. That's it. No prescription. And because of that, how does a patient learn anything about it? What's the right amount to take? Well, the caregiver plays that role. They're somehow empowered with this medical cannabis knowledge by virtue of their state registration. Okay? And a lot of people took it seriously. A lot of people actually learned over time, did research, because many of the people that did that loved the idea that they could actually heal somebody and help them. You know, and there's a lot of heroic stories out there amongst caregivers that have done that. Now, maybe, you know, a lot of different reasons. I remember when I was in the 70s, there was a guy that put out a series of, you know, what is it? I think he had cancer and he like quit his job and like watched comedies for 2 years and like laughed himself healthy. You guys ever, you know what I'm talking about? But I mean, there's all kinds of, you know, things that do it. I'm not saying that, but the you know, sometimes it's all the factors, not just the can, all the factors that are involved with that can serve up the healing and whatnot. But I don't know. I've encountered so many caregivers that, you know, whatever this mojo is and these bills that are being introduced, it's not, you know, and the concerns or whatever they're talking about, the illicit trade, it's not caregivers, not the caregivers that I know, not the caregivers that, you know, caregive to their patients and took pride in it and, you know, worked diligently to try to find out what was best for their patient, whatever it may be. And, you know, and think about how much progress took place. I mean, we used to joke about the evolution at light speed of the caregivers developing products and different methods of ingestion. I mean, it wasn't always the time that carts were a thing, right? All of a sudden they were a thing. I mean, they came out of nowhere. Who was it? It was caregivers, right? I mean, think of all the variables that have been produced just from innovation that was driven by caregivers and all the different methods of, you know, treatment and whatnot. All right. Did I make my point?
You did.
No, I didn't. I could go on. All right.
We got to take a break, and then we're going to come back. We're going to listen to.
I'm not going to talk anymore. I just wanna
you're
make my
going to talk.
You're going to get riled up. Just wait a minute, because we're about to go.
We're going to hit this testimony from Steve Linder, and we're going to hear what everybody has to say.
We're firing up not only one thing, but we're also getting fired up.
Follow up on one thing that Michael's saying is like the numbers are going down on their own. These big companies could worry about just engaging into the industry and working on the regulations therein and how they produce product and how they're able to bring it to market at a fair price and provide service and create, you know, carve out their niche in the market like everybody else instead of worrying about trying to hurt another segment of cannabis activity someplace else. These numbers are balancing out to where the patients need the caregivers, and that's what will continue to happen. I don't think it'll necessarily be zero, but it might get smaller than it is, or, you know, and that's fine. That's going to happen on its own.
Why?
That's why I think it's important for those MCMA folks to come on and discuss why they're taking the position that they're taking for, you know, eliminating that whole system.
Jamie, why do you think it's okay for the patient population to go down and that's okay? I mean, first of all, the patient population goes down, we don't need caregivers. So be careful. So why is it okay if no one...
Well, no, this is assuming that there isn't any change to the existing caregiver situation.
But if the but the caregivers exist via patients, right? So there's got to be a certain number of patients, because not all of them have caregivers, and there's got to be a certain amount for there to be. So, I mean, listen, I thought it was something of significance when Michigan had a robust patient population. It showed that there was a lot of people that were benefiting from it. You know, you saw the exorbitant number of people that were chronic pain patients, you know, population-wise compared to everybody else. And there was a robust caregiver program that went along with it. So I don't know. I think that I don't know if it's good or bad, but I think it's something to look at, that what happened. And I think we could speculate as to what's bringing the patient population down. But it doesn't mean that there aren't sick people of some great magnitude. I mean, there's that statistic. I
didn't imply that there weren't sick people being taken care of. I said that you know, those who need the caregiver type of service that's very specialized, you know, can balance out with what is needed. That's my point. I mean,
listen,
and it's a great system. And if it turns out that the commercial system can't handle the amount of need that's out there, it's there. That shouldn't be screwed with at all.
Here's an idea. How about they just fucking axe the MMFLA? Let the caregivers and the patients do their own thing.
That's exactly what they should do. I thought that's what we were talking about.
Well, what I'm saying is the MMFLA is a disturbance. It's a fallacy that it cares about patients. I mean, saying the idea that they want to make all the commercial ways to purchase it recreational only and kill the caregiver program.
No, they shouldn't. They just leave the caregivers alone.
That's exactly it.
It's a solution in search of a problem.
It already exists.
It has never been a problem.
What they should do is they should eliminate medical.
Yeah, I think that these types of medical programs in other states that have gone legal have also seen a reduction, in participation too. They've also been attacked in different ways,
right?
As well.
Yeah.
What we're experiencing here goes on in other places.
And at the end of the day, they're ignoring the will of the voters. And of course, their argument is, well, Michigan legalized marijuana, so they don't want people growing marijuana in houses and blah 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 blah. Well, let me tell you, Michigan did legalize marijuana, and anybody with half a brain knows that people are still going to jail for marijuana in the state of Michigan. And at the end of the day, if you eliminate the caregiver program, what you're really saying is let's throw more people in jail, which was the entire reason we legalized marijuana, was so that people wouldn't go to fucking jail. So just leave it the fuck alone. If anything, expand it. Stop throwing people in jail for weed.
Are we taking a break? Let's take a break.
Yeah, let's do it. You're listening to Planet Green Trees.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
When you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective: take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knockout victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. ComornLaw.com.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
See you on the dark side. lunatic is in my head. You raise the blade, you make the change, you rearrange me till I'm sane. You knock the door and throw away the key, but there's someone in my head, but it's not me.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
Bill Schuette led the charge against medical marijuana, and even after the will of the voters was decided and the support was enormous, he still continued to fight against the will of the voters, keeping patients from the medicine that they need. So I think it's important that we all speak up on what we think about this initiative. But when the voters have their say, their will must stand.
I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and you are watching Planet Green Trees, the original and #1 podcast in Michigan for all things cannabis and legal news.
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Trees.
Yeah!
I guess we're back. Thanks for staying with us. Episode number 536. Run silent, run deep.
Run it deep.
All right, so we had a bunch of stuff going on, and I think, are we running the Linder stuff? Do you want to do that? Okay, let's just play with
Well,
that.
let's roll it.
I know you spent some time doing that.
I mean, I did spend a little bit of time, so let's we'll roll the tape. You ready, Tommy?
Every presentation you're seeing is going to be uploaded to the minutes, so if you want to go over them again, you can go to the minutes, and everything will be on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Can you hear me? My name is Shelley Edgerton. I'm board chair for the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify on this important package before you today. I'd like to start off with just a brief...
Damn it!
All right. So, just to set the context, what is playing on the video right now, for those of you listening at home not watching this, there's a replay of the testimony of the 5301 bill and the Tie-Bar bills. The person speaking right now is Shelley Edgerton, who's the attorney for the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association.
No, I'm pretty sure she holds
executive director. She's executive director.
Or president or something.
Right.
She has a leadership role.
She is a lawyer at a law firm. It's either Dykema, I don't know, it doesn't matter. But she used to be the head of the marijuana regulatory, or what was before it was.
She used to be the Michigan State weed queen.
She was, and during her tenure and she was responsible for, and she was involved in the Lara, when Lara was giving out patient cards, the caregiver cards. She was at the helm at the time that caregivers during the Rule 19 era were allowed to sell caregiver products to dispensaries or provisioning centers. And never once did she bring up or talk about or create issues regarding testing,
no testing mandates,
or fear of the children being harmed. And I say that because this is some very, very. I don't want to let her do her thing. Let's see what she's got to say.
Brief background on our association. Our #1 priority is patient customer safety.
Just one moment, please.
Sure.
You can't block people in the committee room. They have to be able to see the committee. Okay, so either put them to that side or wherever you can, but you can't block people in my committee room.
This is Chairman Hawk.
Thank you. So just put them over to the left there. Sorry about that. Yep. You can go.
No problem. Thank you so much. MCMA is one of the largest cannabis associations and represents many vertically integrated companies holding Class C licenses for both medical and adult use. Combined, they've invested nearly $1 billion in Michigan's cannabis industry, hired 1,000 employees in good paying positions, and continue to help communities in revitalization efforts in the areas in which they serve. And importantly, they've laid a groundwork for a vibrant, regulated cannabis marketplace based on licensing, high standards, and product safety. MCMA proudly supports the Michigan Cannabis Safety Act. For the first time, this legislation addresses unregulated, the unlicensed cannabis market. And let me be clear, the current caregiver system is not a license, nor is it regulated. The system provides for registration cards for patients and caregivers. This legislation will help ensure that all cannabis products sold in Michigan are tested, labeled to promote consumer safety. That means testing for dangerous chemicals and other materials. It also means clear labeling for products so the patients and consumers know exactly what's in their cannabis, and it's critical for all Michiganders. This is important for those cancer patients and those with authorized debilitating conditions under the MMMA Act who rely on cannabis for medicine, and it will help reduce untested and potentially dangerous cannabis that's making its way into our towards and marketed towards our children. Too many kids have been poisoned by unlicensed, untested, non-labeled products.
Stop it.
This legislation will create
Too many children have been, what did you say, harmed by untested and dangerous cannabis getting into the marketplace? What the fuck is that?
Let's replay it.
Jamie, was I hallucinating there? What was that just said?
That was the plan. What about the kids? It's definitely a big part
The
of it.
children. What about the children?
Okay, keep going.
We're going to keep going.
Framework for cannabis providers to follow the same regulations like testing, tracking, licensing, and safety. We need to bring this unregulated, unlicensed market into the regulated system to improve accountability and transparency. The MCMA welcomes the new cannabis entrepreneurs and businesses in this industry. We are striving as Michigan to become a national leader in the cannabis industry. I think probably many of you have heard Director Brisboe say to such. And this legislation will create an affordable pathway for unlicensed growers who want to serve more than one patient in a licensed marketplace. As Representative Lilly and others indicated, the bills, it's going to allow them to caregivers to continue to serve one patient or 5 patients by becoming a commercial operation. But it's also a quick and easy pathway to become into the licensed marketplace. It's a simple $500 fee. It's an application to the MRA, and MRA shall issue the license within 15 days. It'll allow the SMGs, the specialty medical growers, to legally sell their overages to the medical license grower, and it will allow them to be compensated for sale rather than just the recoupment of an expense, which is now the current law. There is no sales or use tax on those medical patients, and it allows the SMG, which is a plus, to authorize somebody else to help them assist with their plant growth, which is prohibited right now. This bill will also do a couple of things to allow caregivers to work at growers and processors, something that's prohibited now, so they can access marketplace. It fixes some issues with parents with minor children, making them responsible to be a caregiver, but now they can assign that just a caregiver. But it will continue to protect our patients and customers with testing, tracking, and labeling. I mean, here again, Michigan has an opportunity to become a national leader in cannabis safety, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I urge this committee and the legislature to pass these reforms to help ensure all Michiganders have access to safe, regulated cannabis products. Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. I forgot that in addition to the evisceration of caregivers down to only having one patient, there's this carrot on the end of the stick that's like, oh, come out here, and all these cities are going to opt in and let you caregive in a commercial building, and you can then sell it to the shrink.
Not just a commercial building zoned industrial or agricultural.
And approved by the city. And when you do this and find this magical thing, you can sell it into the market. You can sell it into the market, which is shrinking, and they're destroying, right? There's going to be...
Specifically, the medical cultivator in this case, and we just discussed about that this medical license, a specific MMFLA license, is going to go away in one way or another.
Of course. It's a trick bag. Because now you're going to have
the old trick bag.
Now you're going to have no caregivers for any patients. There's going to be no caregiver industrial authorization. It's not even a thing that. I mean, the premise that is being put forth here, that the cities across the state that have had to deal with and despise in many places caregivers, and are just chomping at the bit to try to preclude them, and then you get the DeRuiter case, and all of them are going to town right now, that these cities are good, and they haven't opted in yet for any commercial activity for the medical licensing or the recreational, are just all of a sudden going to let commercial medical take place in their town. I mean, this is a joke. Like, why would they do that if they're not going to do it for MMFLA or whatever?
Right.
First of all, the idea that there's going to be property available to do that is not, because if it was, and these cities were in that position, it would have been gobbled up by the recreational MMFLA license. All right, the lure to be able to start, receiving compensation instead of recoupment of costs. That's not even how they say it. It's called compensation for costs. I mean, maybe it means the same thing, but the idea is that it's so ironic because they're selling them an empty bag. There's nothing here that means anything. The caregivers, to accept this and think that there's going to be economic opportunity in this fantasy of cities saying, "Oh, sure, caregivers, go ahead," but the big money licensed people, they can't have any of this. It's not going to happen. Second thing is that that they're destroying the patient population. There's going to be nobody there, and this whole thing's going to run into the ground anyway. And third, the idea that there's a significant danger that causes a need to look here is not established. Here's a question I have. A couple ones. First is, it's an interesting and effective strategy, Jamie, from a talking point, because the biggest hurdle and interference of the economy of cannabis in Michigan is that there's no access, right? You have to have a certain amount of dollars. The amount of inventory of places to go is limited. That supply problem is caused the price to go way up, of those properties that are available. I mean, there's some things you can find here or there. If the new city opts in, it's a new opportunity. A lot of times when that happens, people have already bought up the property around there. Anyways, but certainly, one of the inherent problems with the way the, MRTMA and tax and regulate is being implemented is because there are very few cities, towns, less than 10% probably, that have opted in for recreational activity. And when that happens, and you have the business advantage of these larger companies coming in under medical, and they've been open for a year or two, and then they get the recreational, it's a huge 3-year business advantage that they're ahead of. They're already functioning and operational. A new place comes online, they're buying it up. They've got the resources. It's an unfair advantage to some degree, but especially when the price. Here's the thing: the accessibility to the market is extremely expensive. Extremely expensive. Capital is necessary, and it's all driven by the regulations. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they're good. I'm not saying they're bad. Whatever. That's what we all voted for: tax and regulate. So it's part of what you all voted for. Not me. I didn't do. I voted for it too, but I'm not alone here. That this is a reality in our world. But what it means. I think is the issue. And I would say if more cities had opted in, there's more property available, and there was more people that would be able to get in. There's a true competition for whose is the best, whatever that means, medical or recreational. I don't think we'd have these problems. I don't think anyone, it was true, but you've got a monopoly and high regulations that are, limiting access to the market. And don't think for 1 second. And, the other thing, I've been trying to say this. Does anyone notice what was taking place here? The idea that cannabis is dangerous in and of itself is the only reason there could be a trade organization, right? Because if it's not dangerous, We don't got anything to worry about. We don't got any fucking regulations we got to be jamming down people's throats. And we got all these concerns and stuff like that. But the point is, like, it's so fraudulent, I have to say. You know, and she's paid lawyer to be there, and, you know, she didn't mention her time as, she didn't say one of her...
No, she didn't.
That
she used to be an employee of the state.
Well, that I used to run the caregiver program, and every day that I showed up, I was, I couldn't sleep at night because I was always afraid that the patients would be getting untested whatever. I mean, she didn't say that. It's not a thing, and if it did, she would. If she really believed that.
She would have done something about it.
If she really believed kids were, then she should be brought up for crimes. Because she's the head of the department when all that would be taking place now. Only if that was taking place when she was the head of the department could she make that argument now.
Indict her. Yeah.
All right. All right, so here's the question. What's the... here's the other thing. As much success as they want to talk about, the $110 million a month, $2 billion a year, how's the social equity program going?
Not great.
It is a failure. You asked me before who we're going to sue next. There is a lawsuit to be had here. I know that there is. I know that the implementation of and their duty as an agency to implement that social equity program is a failure, especially when you hold it up to $2 billion. That is some disparity of anti-equity, not social equity. This is like opposite equity, disproportionality. I mean, I can't believe that this hasn't been more of a stink. I know people are pissed off about it, but where's the... I mean, that chunk of money should be carved out and directed into the communities, allowing people access into... Why is there no access? Because you got a monopoly that's whispered in the ear and running the show here. Someone talk. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. Maybe we should listen to what Steve Linder has to say. What do you think about that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's hear it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Stephen Linder. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association. Probably don't recognize me in a suit and tie. I left my Dr. Evil suit at home. As you heard from the Anderson Economic Group, there are 3 cannabis marketplaces. 2 of them are underground. We represent the largest collection of cannabis manufacturers, the part of the industry that's above ground.
Oh.
Our members are proud of what they built. I want you to come visit us and see us. We have addresses. We have thousands of employees, and they'd all like to thank you for putting into place a regulated system that allowed over $2.5 billion and tens of thousands of jobs to be created. Today, we're going to tell you the story of what these bills accomplish to create a more fully regulated cannabis space that protects the health and safety of Michigan citizens who use cannabis for medicinal purposes. It protects our children, our communities, and our neighborhoods, and creates a fair system for the cannabis industry. But first, I want you to know what the members of the MCMA and many other companies like them stand for and set the record straight. Let me be clear. We are more pro-patient, more committed to transparency, more committed to the safety of kids and patients than anyone in the industry. Now, you're going to hear from those who don't want to be accountable and transparent and convince themselves that no matter how well-intentioned, and we believe that all caregivers are well-intentioned, you may see folks here who benefit from caregivers. We are pro-patient and pro-safety. We feel and are trying to find relief from ailments. But patients should demand that what they put in their bodies and their kids' bodies is truly safe. We have a system in place to do so. It's called the regulated system. Everybody should have to test their products. We need to get large grows out of neighborhoods. True care for patients and your neighbors and your communities. This is not a lot to ask. These bills do some very simple common sense reforms. It makes all those who grow and sell cannabis used for medicinal purposes to be licensed, to test their products, and for those who grow for more than one patient and a small number of plants, move out of neighborhoods and move into more appropriate locations. Cannabis stinks, and I'm going to demonstrate that to you in a minute. And having cannabis in homes in large grows endanger our kids and their neighbors, and we need to make sure that those that grow large amounts of cannabis do so in commercial settings. The bills allow for small caregivers to stay in their homes, one-on-one, and large-scale growers, specialty medical growers, to locate more appropriate facilities. We demand the same for cigarettes, alcohol, beer, gambling, and many others. And these bills allow caregivers and the new specialty medical growers to sell to their patients and to sell to the license system in the case of the specialty medical growers. This will not lose jobs. This will create jobs. This will create thousands of new entrepreneurs, and it will create lowest barrier of entry for social equity. I want to make another thing clear.
There's
I
your
want to
social
repeat
equity, Michael.
These bills do not eliminate caregivers. These bills do not eliminate caregivers. They separate those with medical cards from caregivers. On the contrary, you'll see that all of the folks who are now caregivers will be able to continue to provide for their patients. What these bills do is create a system where all medical cannabis sold is tested to be safe for human consumption by those who are sick. Shouldn't this be the least the government and industry should do? Shouldn't everyone who purports to dispense medicine be able to say, I can guarantee that what I sell you won't contain salmonella, E. coli, fungus, pesticides, pests, heavy metals, arsenic, and any other harmful substances. And by the way, the license system already does that. One part of the story that seems
Not
to be
sure he
lost
should
with
be
the
talking
subject,
about
no
that right
change
now.
ever.
All right. You stop it?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's something that I was going to, this is a good point to ask it. He's bragging about testing. What do you think the percentage is of the cannabis that's on the market that is remediated?
I don't know.
You don't know. Wouldn't you like to know?
It'd be nice.
Do you think it's important?
I would certainly, as a consumer, like to know that information. Yeah.
What's the long-term effect of organic bacteria, sometimes called mold, versus remediated cannabis or vegetables, for that matter? Do we know what the long-term effects are of either of those?
No, I can't imagine. I would imagine one is worse than the other, though.
Well, I think there is some data that we can use that if there was something that was inherently wrong with the organic way of growing cannabis, including bacteria that might have some mold that may not pass a test here, we would see a direct connection of some people's sicknesses or illnesses, wouldn't we?
I promise you it would. 100%.
It would what?
It'd affect them. It affects a lot of people. What are we growing it for if we're not going to test it? We know we're trying to, for the caregivers at least, that are trying to help people that care to test their product. As somebody that has tested hundreds of products,
okay,
I'll tell you this, you know, they're passing mold and allowing people to smoke that, you know.
Well, the point is this. The point is the barriers and what is a pass test and a failed test is arbitrary. You know, like what is that? What are those levels? And the point is that if you pick certain things that are, you know, the argument that I've been told is this: you know, you grow in an organic soil, it's going to have certain bacterias. It may not be mold, but it registers as a bacteria. Organic bacteria will register as a.
You got good and you got bad bacteria.
Okay, but all bacteria is deemed mold and.
Correct.
In the testing. Correct. So the good bacteria, the organic good bacteria, doesn't count.
There's certain bacteria that they test for. So
I understand that, but no. There's some that they do test for, but some good bacteria test positive for mold and then fails. That's the point. So you have to grow in a certain type of medium, and if it does have this, they remediate it anyways. And we don't know what the effect is. So it doesn't. They don't even care what they're growing it in. They may grow it in some terrible ass chemicals that make shitty weed and dangerous, and they remediate it and it kills something. I don't know, maybe not the metals or whatever, but they remediate it, and we don't know what the impact of that. What my point is this though, that there's a great likelihood that over the years, of all the years of people have been smoking cannabis in Michigan, patients, recreation, whatever, that a lot of it had probably been grown in organic material, right?
No, not necessarily in these days, because there's
I'm not saying these days. I'm saying the data that we have that we could rely upon is that, let's just go back to say 1970. The cannabis being grown, whatever's being grown there, you think that was in something other than organic soil?
I mean, when you call the earth organic soil, it's outdoors. That was 1970s.
All right, then let's roll it into some indoor pots and stuff, or some greenhouses. Okay, organic. I mean, I know there are some some higher tech, hydro and the aeroponic at the cocoa or whatever it is.
You got so many.
Right, whatever. So, but my point is that some people generally grow in dirt.
Correct.
And they may even like jack up that dirt and make it really organic-y, rich, and just kind of churn it and
With good bacteria and beneficials.
People use this in their gardens, right?
Outdoors, it's going to grow naturally.
Like probiotics for people.
Right. So So the idea is that there's a theory that the good bacteria is part of what the plant needs. It's organic. It's natural, right?
So of course. So there's that line also, because a bacteria being a bacteria, people don't understand how fast that bacteria
could turn to mold. I got it.
Not even mold. A good bacteria, turn into multiple good bacteria. Now you put a million parts per million of a certain bacteria. Bacillus, first of all, is one of the only bacteria that actually pass 90% of these testings.
All right.
So, testing certainly is purposeful, and for the commercial market, it's required. But as far in the context of these bills, it ought not be mandated for the caregiver system. That's
I
what the
also
question is
thought
in this context, right?
it was very offensive when he said that marijuana stunk. Okay.
Well, do we want to hear more about that? It sounds like he's going to tell us.
It's a personal problem.
Hold on. This is first of all. I don't want to move on. The testing thing is an interesting phenomenon because they say, I think I may be wrong, but when they say tested marijuana, they believe that caregivers will never be able to pass testing. I could be wrong, but I think that they think that if they don't, whatever mechanisms they're using and growing, if it's not going to pass testing, they're just going to remediate it, and they got the ability to do it. So everything they're growing, it's getting into the market because
they just remediate it.
Because they grow whatever the fuck they want, and then they pass the test by remediating it, and then just it's like it kills. So I do think
For these bills, it has to be tested before it gets to the pass testing, before it gets to the.
Right, but they'd have to, but they would. But the point is that I'm making is this: there may have been some bad cannabis that's been grown and sold, and there may, but if it existed to the extent where, whatever you're 1975 to 2012, okay.
Or the last 13 years of the caregiver system.
Or the last 13 years, if the untesting of it was a real problem, you'd be able to point to it.
Yeah.
There'd be a group of people. It's kind of like the same argument with like when they said medical marijuana patients could not be charged with any presence of controlled substance. The rest of the population could, in order to convict the patient for driving, they had to show that they were impaired for other reasons. But just having the presence was a pass for patients, right? The point is that, anyways, it's an example of how it, analogous to that.
Well, we had like back in the 70s when we sprayed a bunch of weed with paraquat. Remember that?
The driving point is that if letting patients drive with any cannabis in their system was such a terrible safety hazard, and the interpretation of the court that patients are allowed to have it in their system, but the rest of the people aren't because it's dangerous or whatever the reasons are,
it's very dangerous.
Then there would be a lot of accidents that existed and happened that would show that it's dangerous.
One would think
nothing. Okay, my point is here that there's been no testing for 12 years. I'm not saying it's not needed, but there's the hype here about this danger and shit. I don't know. I mean, it may be a genuine concern.
It is not.
But certainly,
untested cannabis is not necessarily dangerous. That's
I understand.
well known.
So that's the point.
He's hitting all the bullshit.
If it was dangerous, or if it really was a harmful thing by not testing, then all the years that it was grown, wherever it was grown,
people would be up in arms.
They'd be
like,
fucking
oh my
right.
God.
They wouldn't be probably like so supportive of legalizing something.
The other thing is this:
easily so dangerous.
The other thing is this: I don't know that. Does anyone see the whatever the levels are that they're talking about in the testing? You know, where were those drawn from? Who has done the testing that if you on rats that if the mold levels are this high and you pump that into the rats for a period of time, it's gonna have an impact.
The MRA took care of all of that.
I'm just saying,
you don't
like
have to worry.
There's no. The federal government didn't come up with this. Like they didn't test and come up with what. It's just drawn out of the sky.
Federal government doesn't like marijuana.
The point is, there's nothing about that. Whoever came up with this just came up with it.
Well, it was. I mean, it was Shelley Edgerton, wasn't it?
There were some work groups.
He's talking like benchmarking test results across the nation. It's. I mean, maybe there is at this point the ability to do that because so much cannabis is being tested. I'm sure you can. You can do something like that, but providing a benchmark, but dependent upon, and there have been Vice shows in regards to this as well about testing facilities, and you pay them a little bit extra, and they're gonna push your.
Well, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to get to here because the overblownness of the testing and the need for it for concern. Is overhyped. Number one. Number two is the whatever numbers and values that they're looking for to pass fail is not of an original thought or even something that was scientifically established. In fact, it's probably taken from the couple states that did it before, and mingled into some stuff. Now there are some probably dangerous chemicals that should never, that would identifiable. They shouldn't be in any kind of human consumption. That would be on the list.
Paraquat.
PGRs.
Right. All right, but and I'm sure there's people that are fucked up, but again, as far as I know, has there ever been a death from the use of cannabis that we know of? I mean,
well, the paraquat, the paraquat weed, but the government had a hand in that, I believe.
I don't think there's a death connected. Do you mean some long-term death from smoking?
From smoking the paraquat weed? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Let's see.
What about the vitamin E?
That's from smoking paraquat, right?
That's my point. That's the only example I can hit because weed doesn't hurt you. That's the thing.
That's okay, right? So, but that would mean then if you think you're buying cannabis got paraquat in it, you should be that's why we should be testing for paraquat, right?
Yeah, because it's an epidemic right now of people getting paraquat weed.
So here's my point. If the barrier between caregiver cannabis and market cannabis is the testing, then you would think that the testing has significance, meaning, and scientifically based. When you hear that you can pay a little more to pass the test, or you hear a little bit, there's a phenomenon that's gone on across the country, which is there's an inflated amount of THC that is in each batch now, which means one of two things: either there's been a exponential advance in the ability of people to produce higher levels of THC, or the labs are fudging the numbers. And there's evidence of both, maybe. But the amount that's being increased is like disproportionate to the traditional increases over time. And I think also Michigan went. Every now and then you see a bulletin that some batches got through. How did that happen? How do some batches get through? The testing system that they use to guarantee the product safe.
They got through.
I mean, when you hear that, do you think that they got it all? Do you think any others have gotten through that they haven't kind of... This isn't the first time either.
No, it happens every once in a while.
More than once.
There was a Anyway, so the whole point of the fallacy, the trap door here is that, regulated, tested, but the testing is just, it's, I don't know. I mean, I think it has a purpose and cause, but, it's a fine line. Listen, I know that tax and regulate is always going to include testing. I get that. But I do question whether or not, I don't know. I mean, I think maybe it's the time to revisit what we're testing for, and
that's the whole point there. What we're testing for, what we're fixing. So that's where the testing comes in hand, or needed. Without it, you're smoking a medicine that they call you're healing this to what cause that.
No, I understand. We don't want to get sicker because, of course, but
depends on what you're doing with it. You fix one thing and hurt another. That's where the testing comes in. But you need reliable testers. And how do you find reliable testers?
Well, it's not a question of finding. They've already been found.
Supposedly.
I'm just saying to you that the structure that these arguments are being made in, of needing the caregivers that are the untested to come into this structure that involves the testers. That means they've been found, and that program that they're using to figure this out and say you've got to go through the baptism to get here is just insane, because it is what it is. Like we're not going to find anybody. They've already.
If you ask me, you should present your product, what you're going to be selling, promote it. With the application.
All right.
The whole testing thing, going back to, yes, nobody's really died from it. And I don't really, for myself, I guess I don't care all that much, except for if they say they're going to do it and they're going to do it this way, that's what they should be doing. So, I used to also think, on a separate note, well, how in the great wide world could a batch that was 3 months old, how would a person just finally be smoking that? Because, I would smoke it right when I left, right? So most people are like that. A joint doesn't last for very long. Well, the reason is because wherever it's sitting in storage or whatever, that's the batch date. It's old as heck.
Yes.
So it's old. It's like at least 6 months old.
Minimum.
First of all,
yeah, that's gross.
So now it's totally a different product.
There you go. There's no aged life on that, number one, and number two, we didn't even talk about like the idea. Here's the thing. The idea that the plants being grown and are passing testing, and how the plants are grown and it passing testing are two totally unrelated things. Like the actual way the plants are being grown could be the worst possible way, creating the worst shit, and the remediation cleans it, right? And the remediation cleans, then it's past testing. That's not.
The old remediation.
It doesn't solve the problem. I don't know what it remediates, but it seems like it's anyways. We don't know. That was the original question. We don't know what remediating cannabis does to the consumer.
Nope.
We don't have those studies.
No, we don't.
Right?
I mean,
but
that's how we need them.
Right.
From my understanding, Michael,
Yes.
it does also remove the terpenes and some of the. And Jamie, you probably know more about this with, your connection with a provisioning center. But when you have to remediate a product, which means you put it into like some type of ionizer or of sorts, doesn't that affect or reduce or eliminate the terpene profile that one would get on that plant?
That's my whole point.
I've heard it like weakens the cellular structure somehow, and it degrades faster.
That's
I
right
don't really
there.
know much about it.
It's
I've just
degrading.
had that discussion.
So you know what? If that's the case, you find that date of when the product starts to to get old, what they would call, you know. So at that point, now you got a whole different terpene profile, and you got THC that's testing 21%, but you're smoking 18 point something percent. Why? Because of age.
Right. And CBN, if I'm not mistaken, is one that increases as the THC degrades. So it's like the older the bud might have more higher THC.
So it should have an expiration date?
No, I'm just saying if you want to go to sleep, smoke some bud that's like, a couple years old.
The old bud.
Like those are some things. I mean, you would think that knowing that there's a degradation of this, unless I hate to think that we're talking about like preservatives.
We need some preservative weed. We need also
right.
Let's go back to the hearing.
So have a longer shelf life, like good. You know what I mean? Like built for like the army. They like some.
Or if you have an up-to-date test, and then it's not like that cannabis isn't usable. You just want to know what's in it now.
Well,
MSG.
I'm saying though that the selling a product without like the whole idea that it doesn't change in some way may not be the same as what it was if it had some. I don't know. It can get more moldy if it's wet.
You got so many different variables,
right?
And that's why I feel like caregivership, the small grows. Going back on that subject, you can control better. Where with the large grows, you got to put in someone state for example. Now you have to put somebody that's going to micro grow to grow that quality and not that mold, which is guaranteed PM, that's going to grow on these plants. Guaranteed.
So you basically take a guy that's used to just growing 72 plants or something and stick them in a huge warehouse. And to Jamie brought up earlier, his guest on one of the podcasts, I can't remember, I think Kat was her name or something, but she was saying something about that many times they will hire temporary employees to come in. And so you're even talking about an individual who has even less knowledge than someone who's coming in. It's hard to scale up. It's hard to scale back. It's like cooking for a family, I find now that I don't have 4 people to cook for, I'm still cooking for 4 people. It's just, that's kind of like growing cannabis, I guess.
I agree. I think we've jumped off long enough. I do want to say it's when you talk about testing in just the random and arbitrary methods by which we're talking about, it's here, and shouldn't the testing products have a shelf life and give some indication of maybe that it may be altered or whatever by the age? And shouldn't the labeling at least have Jimmy? You looking into that funny face you made? That's funny. Did you snark at me when I said that? How about putting whether on the labels of whether it's remediated or not? That to me is hiding the ball. What do you think?
A remediation label.
You got
that would be so excellent. So excellent.
Snarky Jamie, what do you say?
Well, they get one chance at it. If there's a fail, there's an opportunity for remediation and then to test it again. Like the people buying it can tell if that's the case. They don't typically report it, so I don't think.
So you're saying they should buy two sets of bags, pre-printed bags, one that have remediated on them and one that do not?
Maybe I'm just saying
they
what
sell them
happens.
on Amazon.
And then but the other thing is, but leading up to that point, I don't think that it's necessarily known. So if you just do it as a matter of practice for whatever you're growing, I don't think that's necessarily obligated to be exposed.
But shouldn't it be?
I think it should, but I don't want to stir the pot or anything, but as a consumer, which is, no pun intended there, by the way, but as a consumer, not having any horse in the race at all, just as a consumer, I want to know if, and especially now in the day and age where Many times you can't smell it, you can't see it, and you're going just based off of the name and whatever the test results happen to display at that time. You know, so, and we've already talked about the errors in that. So I don't know. I just feel like yeah,
Remediation testing, yes.
Yeah, I feel like remediation is the way to go if you have, if not the way to go, but it's the way that they need to tell people, because I would choose a flower based on that. If I had two flowers sitting right next to each other, one has gone through remediation, one has not, I will go with the one that has not.
Unremediated.
Unremediated. Au naturel.
Interesting choice.
A better question is, how much of the cannabis that's on the market produced by the licensed growers would have passed testing without remediation?
Oh.
You know,
yeah, you're talking a big percentage. You're talking percentage. You got to count numbers. To be honest, most of them.
Probably, that's what I'm saying. So this joke about this testing shit that they're pushing is a joke.
So that's why
there's nothing magic about the way they're growing and passing testing. They just have a machine that remediates the shit. I mean, what is that? I'm just saying it minimizes the value
Do they remediate lettuce?
What?
You up to safety.
Lettuce.
Not all lettuce.
Do they
Yeah, I
remediate
think
it?
you can. I think you can do everything.
They do it in Canada with their fruits and vegetables.
They remediate it?
Yes, I think.
Huh.
But the whole and I don't want to misspeak because I'm not a remediator, but I think it's the opposite of like organic. You know what I mean? Like it would not. It's
It
not
doesn't sound organic.
right. But I'm saying somebody maybe.
I mean, organic or not, everything comes from an organic compound, synthetic.
Well, the point. I'm saying it's like when I say organic, I mean, you know, it's origin. It's from its origin is what it is, I guess. You know what I mean? Something to that effect. Instead of like created from something else would be synthetic. But this remediation process, I mean, we don't know if it changes the molecular structure of it.
Right.
There could be a twist in there of something that we don't even know about that does something weird.
Not enough study.
Okay, but I'm saying to you that, and you know, we know that and there's nothing identifiable with those people that smoke marijuana that it wasn't remediated. Because there's been a lot of cannabis that was smoked and used that is not remediated. No identifiable things that kind of point to any one particular problem. But this is a whole new area, and I know that. I don't know. Maybe I'm making more of it than it is. Maybe it's proven. Maybe there's, I don't know. Maybe there's some Canada studies that say it's not a big deal if that's what they do. I remember this came about because there was the, Jamie, this is the first time I'd heard about this. It was when they passed that Schedule 2 Canada Prairie Plant Farm thing that there was...
pharmaceutical grade cannabis.
Which I think... I remember around that time learning of that both the fruit and vegetable industry required, that was their like approval for fruits and vegetables that would be remediated, and that's what they also did with the cannabis and whatnot. But
if Michael, going back to that kind of thing, and even Rob Robar, one of the gents that's commonly on the show, he mentioned that a lot of the food crops are remediated. One of the, if you remember back a while when we were having that whole vape pen scare, Eagle 20 is a common product used in agriculture. I believe now it's banned in California, but they use it on a lot of different fruits and vegetables, and it's fine. I don't know if it's fine or whatever, but consumed that way, we're not growing 3 arms and 6 eyes or something. But when you combust it and turn it up to a specific type of temperature, that's when it changes its composition, and then it becomes like cyanide or something similar to that. That's poisoning. So if we remember back to that, the Eagle 20 was one of the main culprits. along
I mean, that's
with some of
that's
the
probably
other
one
stuff
of the
too.
worst chemicals you could use, right? Is a chemical Eagle 20. I mean, Eagle 20 will and Avid together. I mean, I would say are probably the two worst sold products and most sold products on the market because it's unfortunately what works, but it's bad for you. And they use it on our crops. It tells you if you read the bottle, but people don't care, obviously. I mean, you got some people that care and you got some people that don't, you know, and that's where I go back to microgrowing. But back on the subject, with those products, people don't understand what kind of cancer and what it does to your body after consumed. And that's the main thing, is why are we growing? Or why are we growers? We're growing to help people, So if we're going to help people growing, they're allowing these products to be sold for years now. It tells us there's just not enough testing on the products we're allowed to buy or being out there, usable products that can harm us in certain ways. But now they want us to test our marijuana. I completely agree with the testing on the marijuana, but you're going to allow to sell products that are going to do something to you that they're testing for and allow it, and grow stores, and food stores, anything you put in your mouth that's organic is sprayed with Eagle 20 no less than 14 days before harvested. And half-life on that product is 65 days, depending on how that grower is flushing. And with that being said, 65 days, 9 weeks, that's your harvest time or your veg time, when you pick to use it, So there's your pros and your cons, and that's where it comes down to the grower, And at the end of the day, I'd never use Eagle 20 because to prevent a product like that, as a grower, I will tell you this,
Okay. Eric Kels, go ahead. Go ahead, keep going.
There's probably lots that do.
I got my own opinion, I'll say. True.
And we'll leave it there.
I'm going to say this, that they're not doing enough testing on what they're selling at grocery stores and where we're eating, for example, that they allow us what's coming into our body, but they're worried about other things coming into our body, but, that they're stopping and putting their foot down. Now, why don't you put your foot down on everything? You want to pick and choose.
Agreed.
So, that's where you got that line as well, too, is who's making these rules? Is it someone that's in it that's making big money and that's continuing just all this marijuana being tested and ran and.
All right, let's get the video going.
Oh, we got to do the video. All right.
Back to
the story of those companies whose value proposition is to do things the right way. I'm not going to go over this, Shelley. I already talked about our members. We represent about 40% of all the investment in safe, state-of-the-art, job-creating, tax-paying facilities in the state of Michigan. As you saw with the Anderson Economic Group, the persistence of unlicensed and untested cannabis from caregivers in the totally illegal market has swamped the license system. Is it sane and good public policy to allow this to continue? Either Michigan is committed to a regulated cannabis marketplace providing safe product, jobs, and taxes, or it isn't. We just have to do better. Now, let me give you a few examples to highlight what these bills are attempting to do. So, I brought a couple of props here. This is medicine, okay? You have to show your license at a pharmacy to even get Sudafed for allergies. It's got FDA tracking numbers. It's got barcoding on it. This is medicine for pain relief. Sealed, tested, sold at a
Probably because
pharmacy.
you're going to make meth with
Wine. We have a buttoned up regulatory system for wine. You all read in the paper the other day about wine being shipped illegally into the state. And the Michigan beer and wine wholesalers raised Cain over it, and the Attorney General stood up and said, we're going to do something about the wine that is not supposed to be sold in the state of Michigan. The same with beer. The same with alcohol. All of these are highly regulated. We just do not allow a system that allows any of these products to be sold outside the regulated system. Now, this is cannabis. This is legal. It was purchased. It's tracked. It's safe. It's tested. And this is what people in the license system sell. One is medical. One is adult use. This is caregiver product. There's nothing on it. We don't know where it came from. We don't know who grew it. We don't know what is in it. This is not a rational system, ladies and gentlemen. And just to show you what we're talking about, people talk about plants. I tried to get full-size plants. I tried to get plants in here, wasn't able to do it. This is 12 plants, okay? This is one person's allotment, and if you've never seen a plant, they're pretty big and they're pretty wide. Imagine 6 times this much in somebody's basement or somebody's garage next to the house that you live in and that your kids play in the yard. Again, rational, but unless you understand the scale, you're not going to be able to understand why there's a problem that needs to be solved. So, I'm going to get to closing here, Mr. Chairman. Let's respond to the arguments of those who oppose. All laws change as policy and those affected by it change. No change is a slogan. It's not a cogent argument. I've worked on 3 rewrites of energy regulation, 2 of telecom, 7 of auto insurance. All laws get updated, especially when health and safety of sick and vulnerable people are involved. We've already told you that no one who currently is registered as a caregiver will be driven out if they choose to stay in the profession. We also hear the claim that caregiver products never harmed anyone. First of all, that's not the standard in America. No product, no consumer product, no pharmaceuticals get to market unless they are tested and certified as being safe for use or for consumption. We don't wait for people to be hurt or poisoned. Why should the above ground industry be forced to spend tens of millions of dollars to grow and to pass rigorous testing for contaminants with a price of a failed test costing hundreds of thousands of dollars when others distributing the same product don't? But I'm a trust but verify kind of guy. So we pulled up bulletins from the Marijuana Regulatory Agency during a period of time when caregivers were still selling into the system. Of all the product that failed, 93% of it was caregiver product. 93%. Suppose it could be worse. And what did they fail for? E. coli, heavy metals, pesticides, salmonella, mold, and other dangerous chemicals. And I've put this on your desk so that you can take a look at it. So, as I close, we support these bills. We think that all cannabis should be tested, should be certified as being safe. We need to protect the integrity of neighborhoods. Every caregiver that wants to continue to be a caregiver now has a financial incentive to do so, to be a profit-making business, but more importantly, to be transparent and be accountable to their patients and to the citizens of Michigan in the neighborhoods and communities in which they live. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? We have a question.
All right. I heard something interesting there, Jamie. I'll ask you about the comparison to the illegal importing of wine in the wine industry raising Cain, I think he said. Did you say raising Abel or raising Cain? Raising Cain. And the Attorney General said she's going to do something about it or something like that. Do you think that that was a it was subtle, but I think it creates an idea that do you think that other attempts to go after what he's calling caregivers, but may not really be caregivers, but people that are in the illicit market, whatever you want to call them, do you think that is it possible that they have reached out to the Attorney General expecting some kind of enforcement and whatnot?
You got a few.
Not a lot, but
not a lot.
Well, I'd say that when enforcement may be a raid, but the question is, have they been prosecuted? I mean, they're just, I think they don't know what to do.
That's
There's been some raids, but I mean, it's a interesting issue because I think that that's a political thing. Like if they don't get, they're here saying like the law is the law.
Of course.
We want lawfulness going on, and there's other shit's going on, and now they're calling it caregivers, but it's just the cannabis market that's always existed. I mean, it's always been there. It's not specifically caregivers. Caregivers are something else. They shouldn't be calling it caregivers. And really the solution is whatever they're complaining about, it already exists.
Yeah.
They already have ways to punish it. MRTMA itself says, it's you have you're growing too much, 1.5 times as much. It's a civil infraction, 2.5 times or more. Misdemeanor not punishable by jail unless it's for commercial, habitual. What are they?
Yep.
Violence.
It's got to be willful, habitual, and for commercial purpose or involves violence.
Right. So, if they have that evidence and they can make that evidence, then I don't know what the penalty is. It's certainly not. It would suggest that it's not a misdemeanor not punishable by jail.
It suggests you go back to the public health code.
Or you drop out of something else. So, now, so those things exist already, and if they really wanted to utilize without having this has nothing to do with caregivers, right? If someone's doing that, then
it has to do with someone's bottom line. Their perceived bottom line. And what they're going to find is that just by eliminating the caregivers, you're not going to increase your profits.
That's the problem. They don't want the profits. People aren't claiming. And it's so easy.
Yeah, but they're not a threat.
Right.
They're not a threat, and they make $110 million. I don't know what else they want right now. And the market will grow, and at some point there'll be more people buying cannabis, and it'll continue to do that. But in the meantime,
in their head, what's 120 when you can do 220?
Well, it's just going to go in that direction, but it's not going to happen by them owning all this. It's more cities have to open up, more locations have to be available, more people have to have access to the market.
With that being said, it costs about $300 to $500 to make a pound, and that's where a caregiver is not going to be able to caregive correctly. With being able to do that.
In the commercial market? Listen, the competing in the licensed market is not really competition because there's limited access for people to get in. Not a lot of properties that allow it to take. But I'm talking about licensed, not caregivers. Right. And because of that, supply demand of even the opportunity, let alone the expense and capital that goes into needing to facilitate it, and it just has blown up the price and cost and amount of capital that's needed to secure a place, even if you pre-qualify. However, if instead of 10% of the cities and villages that had opted in, you have 50% across anywhere, every county's got half of the cities opted in, then they're not going to have enough people really fill it. I think the answer to a lot of this is not doing what they're doing here, but it's to think about how they can get better access, how more people can have access. Like they should have some rule that something like
certain amount of people are allowed to caregive. Because some people preferred caregivers.
You leave the caregivers alone. You don't touch the caregivers. I'm saying though, if a person lives in a agricultural industrial zone where there's X amount of yardage, blah, 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 and they have a pole barn, and they want to be a licensed 100 plant grower, that they should have an opportunity to do it. It should, like it should just be that easy.
I mean,
the power of the city to stop that from happening. I mean, think about that. If everybody had a fucking pole barn could grow 100 plants.
Pros and cons.
I mean, it's regulated and shit. You know, I mean, I think it helps.
I think they should be able to grow them in their basement. I don't give a shit. Like if there's a problem, the building inspector is going to deal with it.
That's the thing, and that's where.
Well, I'm just saying. I think the issue, you make it commercial. You can, it's like give people. I mean, listen. I'm just trying to I'm trying to come up with some level of, not what I think it should be, but what might be acceptable. You know what I mean? Because if the idea is that you don't want to create more prohibitions. That's the whole point. Like this whole idea that more prohibitions is going to make them better. No, it's just going to drive. We know that. Well, it's a losing battle. The war on drugs is a loser. Don't create more of it. Tax and regulate should not be the new prohibition. I'm suggesting, just from a market standpoint, I don't care what fucking commodity it is. I don't care what it is. The idea here is that you're going to do this they want to get just the big marijuana. They're going to own it all, and no one's going to get any, and continue to say, "Fuck you! You got to smoke our weed, and all the other weed's illegal." That's my point. That's what they're trying to do. So the way that's never going to work. If the goal is to eliminate, quote unquote, the illicit market, okay, then you have to let the market of illicits be in the other market, and you have to let it be so that competition level is created where true competition of the quality and demand is what drives it. Not we're the only ones with license, so you got to smoke our weed, and we remediated it, and it sucks, and we got to pay some extra money to get it jacked up to 27% THC. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, across the board, it's based on quality in some way. It's like, whether it's a farmer's market, whatever it is. I'm saying, if that happens, and this is a pathway to it, and the good quality growers can get in on that, and the people that would be driving out here and can actually, that would be in the illicit market because they're so good at it, and they can compete and whatever, then it's just going to shrink in. It's going to shrink, and the thing will level itself off. The prices will become normal. The quality become better. The idea, listen, competition is good.
Of course it is.
Of course, it makes you better.
And we live in our capitalist society. Competition, and listen, I'm not saying. I mean, if you accept the idea we have a capitalist economy, and that's what we're doing, then the function of it is to be competitive about it. And I'm not saying I'm not saying
that's being cocky in a way.
I'm not saying competitive. In other words, beating someone in that context, but competitive market means it's not just, someone prevailing not based on merit, right? It should be merit based. You're good at it. It's good quality. Then you should get rewarded for it. It shouldn't be that you have more money. I mean, I understand
reward, I mean, if you're really passionate about it, is when that patient comes to you and says...
We're not talking about patients. I'm just talking in the marketplace. Because at the end of the day, I mean, there's a certain patient aspect of this, but I'm saying the market as a whole. The market as a whole, I'm saying. Jamie, what do you think about this? Am I making any sense?
Yeah, again, there's no reason to peel back any existing rights. There's no reason to impose any additional burdens or mandates.
What's the solution, though? Leave it alone? They're not going to leave it alone. What's the solution?
Leave it alone.
More testing.
All right, here's the thing. Let me just tell you, this is like, Jamie, where do you want to, I'll tell you what, let's go to, let's go here for dinner. And you're like, I don't want to go there for dinner. I go, where do you want to go? You go, I don't know. Well, let's go here for dinner.
Well, in this case, that is what it is. There is no negotiating these.
There is no dinner when it comes to the
negotiation
MMA.
Is fuck these bills. If there are questions that need to be addressed, then a work group with the relevant, important stakeholders giving meaningful input has to be put into place. That's what mainly we are angling for.
I understand that, but my question is this. We know that the bills are not negotiable. We've already established with pretty solid evidence made in this record that we're involved in right now.
You could peel back a lot of shit off these bills, and they would still be.
I'm not. All right, listen. My point is this: nobody's. We've eviscerated the concept of their entire existence. That they're just not. They're not credible. They're lying, and it's false propaganda. Now, let's assume they're not going away, and they have the voice of the people, of the voice of those that may be able to undo it. And there needs to be a. I'm not saying. I mean, is there a way other than legislating? Is there a way? I mean, if they're going to legislate, or is there a way to administratively rule change? Is there something that can be done? And it may need, very broad stroke that would actually alter the dynamics of the playing field as it exists right now, which is, there's two sides of the view, meaning you got a small group of licensing people complaining about everybody else, right? And
creating fabricating a hysteria, a baseless, health concern.
And standing in a position that they are authorized to and are making the rules about how the cannabis world is going to take place. And ultimately their message is, you're all going to have to fucking buy our cannabis and nobody else's. And that's our message, and we want you to take out everybody else. So my question is, I get we're not changing the law. I get that I think, well, I know what I think, but I'm trying to ask the question so you can generate an answer. Is there anything that would change the dynamics that would actually accomplish the MRTMA's goal at the end of the day? And I say this because in the objective reality that I live in, I can see that we supported
leaving the caregivers and the MMA.
That is unequivocal. Alone. That is unequivocal. And I'm not suggesting that one caregiver is part of any illicit market. But if I acknowledge that there is an illicit market of persons that do exist, but they're not what I'm calling a caregiver, okay?
Well, and there are people that exceed limitations or whatever you want to say about it. Yeah,
Right, and
that's not a
caregiver, right? And I'm saying the whole dynamic and the naming and the semantics of calling them caregivers has been the problem here. They may exist. I'm not saying I'm against those people, but they've named them caregivers, and they should be called something else. And I also say what?
I agree.
All right, and I also say that the recreational law says the intent of this law is to legalize marijuana for adults over the age of 21 and hemp and blah, 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 and also to create a regulated market and to eliminate the illicit market. Okay, so what they eliminate. So anyone that voted for that is signed up for that. Now, we all may have different means of saying how to get rid of the illicit market, and that's really what I'm asking, right? The question, fuck Steve Linder, but like if we all voted for the MRTMA, and we acknowledge that there's an illicit market,
how do you get rid of it?
In the context of tax and regulate.
Yeah,
I'm not suggesting arrests.
You peel back the restrictions and prohibitions that exist in the marketplace, make it easier, less expensive, and more efficient for the businesses to run. They'll be able to create competing products. And
now that he knew exactly what I was talking about before I had to break that thing down. I asked this question 20 minutes ago. It took me till now. He knew exactly what I was saying. I even said the answer. I was like, "This is what I think." Jamie, can I get you to agree? Can I get you to agree to me? He's like, "I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you're talking about." Just kidding. I'm kidding. But it's true. I'm saying the idea. I use this analogy if tax and regulate like alcohol means it's everywhere. You get it in any store. Walk in a party store, liquor store. There's a case of beer that you can get here, there, and everywhere. Now that's kind of depressing But there may be some specialty place you can stop it the way.
But there's a reason that most people don't brew their own beer. Like some people do, and that's totally cool. But most people, it's easier and honestly cheaper to just go to the store and buy some beer. And I think, ultimately marijuana will be the same.
It might be. I think that you have to have. I think marijuana is not necessarily like alcohol in that regard. I think that because it is so unique and it has such a unique impact on everyone's endocannabinoid system, and it varies so much that the idea of the selections across every place of that as being just that limited, is a miss. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, to you it is, but to you.
I know. But I'm saying, there's the answer is that there's other places that are more specialized and maybe crafted, and those. But the length of time for us to get there.
Oh, it's going to be
forever.
It's going to be
in this regulated system. So I'm saying, so that's what I'm talking about. And that's what Jamie.
Uneducated people.
But that's what Jamie is agreeing with me about, which is that if it's true that that's where we want to go, and that's what tax and regulate cannabis looks like, and the goal is to try to create a real, true, organic marketplace of cannabis instead of creating prohibitions, right? Instead of going after caregivers and trying to lock them on, stop this and whatever. That doesn't work. Instead, what you do is
those companies with historic perspective, with an understanding of things, would have known that comes with the territory as they enter into this market.
Correct.
Like they are trying to think, oh my God, I can't believe this stuff's going on.
And that's the problem, where instead of a raid, you have it monitored, So they knock on your door, or you get a notice rather than you get your door kicked down and charged for multiple other things that aren't true.
Well, they're trying to create a situation here where that may not happen anymore. I mean, the whole drawing of attention to caregivers is really a problem. There's been much fewer raids, but all this talking stuff is drawing attention to something that doesn't exist. But because they're calling it caregivers, and because there's so much money
they're
involved,
trying to make it stretch.
Of course they are, but look at, they got a bills introduced, and they're calling it caregivers, and this whole thing is being.
I mean, caregiver is not a proper name, obviously.
Well, they named it, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but
we aren't saying they're babying them. But
the article is the MCMA has come under fire for supporting legislation that would license and regulate medical marijuana caregivers by limiting the total number of plants. So they're under fire for doing that. So they're calling it caregiver. But yes, they're barking up the wrong tree. The question, so what I'm saying is this. This is old school drug warrior shit. Mm-hmm. They're trying to create prohibition so they.
Yeah, and they're profiting off
can
of
be
it.
the drug.
That's the whole point.
And
a lot.
And if the goal really is to stop the illicit drug market, then you have to open up the market for more. So the answer is you got to force these fucking cities to opt in. You have to force the state to pay for the capital to fix up these buildings, and let I don't know, just get something there. What is it? What's there, Jay? What is that? I mean,
if you ask me, to be honest, it's look at like they say about Miami. You have cocaine that built Miami. Right now, marijuana is building Michigan and Detroit. Detroit's the best it's ever been. They're taking nasty streets and making them beautiful buildings. And
I'm no dummy.
One day, what do you think that's going to be? It's going to be some type of store, rather than a burned down building.
Okay, but all right, that's fine. And there's a lot of that going on all over. Yes, it's true. But there will be a time when it neutralizes itself. And if it goes legal federally, it's going to neutralize itself. But the point that I'm making is and it will be not a big deal. It'll be everywhere at some point. It'll be just like liquor, right? But I'm saying, and that's the direction that's going to go over time. There'll be a lot of buyouts and transitions and transactions and takeovers and people moving around. But it's not going to be, if there isn't a neutral market that's got a lot of offerings by but with a lot more people with opportunities to compete instead of just limited groups that are running it this way. It's going to take a lot longer to get there, and it's just going to create more gray and dark market, and it's just not going to be something that even comes close to any kind of tax and regulate. It's just going to be prohibition. We're in this club, and you can't get in it. You can't sit at our table, and this club over here is you guys, and you're not in our club. That's because you voted for it, tax and regulate. All right, has everyone had enough? It's 10:13. Amanda, you've been quiet. Jump in. Give your final thoughts.
What do you think, Amanda?
Well, I think a lot of things, but I think that you're right. And when you say that it's ultimately all moving in the same direction and it's going into the adult use, it makes sense from everyone's perspective. Unfortunately, who's going to be left behind and damaged in the crossfire are going to be the ones who really truly need the medicine, and that's a shame. It's a shame to see. Of course, times change, things change, legislation changes, people change positions within, different legislative bodies and such. But, I think from Michael and Jamie and many other people on this call and even way beyond need to continue to talk about it and to stand up for the patient's rights, just like what you have been doing. So hats off to you.
Definitely.
But yes, the caregiver is going to be getting the patients are getting the short end of the stick,
yes,
in my opinion.
I agreed 100%.
Yeah, from the get-go. The whole program from the state does not contemplate, and there's a lot of extra layers in it that, the business can't work if you're going to try to be compassionate and sell or give away.
Now, you got to do one or the other, and what has happened is Michigan has taken the stance where they want to become or to be the national leader in cannabis. They've made the statement. Shelley Egerton, I believe, also made some kind of statement. And with that comes removing people who don't fit that mold. Okay.
Sure.
So you look at different states, you look at the different products in the different states. Some of these stores, many of these stores now are nationwide. They're chains. They have nationwide products in regards to edibles and things like that. So a lot of this discussion with the MCMA from here in Florida, as an example, I go into a dispensary. The only edible they had was a Wana edible. Now, here I have a moral dilemma because I'm sitting here like, oh, man, what am I going to do now? So, you shouldn't put patients in a situation like that, if you just do the right thing, even when no one's looking. It's called integrity.
Correct.
Word of the day.
Yes, I agree. And that's why it should be monitored, and you should have a certain amount per city, and you have your patients choose what they want.
All right, so you know what the worst takeaway from all this shit is with this fucking Steve Linder shit is we just finished up the really successful Cannajam, which we didn't even talk about tonight.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Very successful.
And part of the theme of that was just to fucking stop the stigma, right? Yeah. Enough stigma with the fucking shit, and we've already gone through this, and this was just bad negative stigma shit that just spewing out that it's like silly and irrational. And I know we're talking the big game of cannabis, and it's got to be acceptable. And I'm not saying that anyone wants to be reckless.
Sure, how I even feel about it, like being a national thing. It's happening though. I mean, I don't even know how to feel about the whole thing. It takes away that whole, one-on-one interaction type of situation that you were just talking about, Michael. It takes it completely out of the equation.
And this is common. I mean, this happens in other states too. I mean, every other industry also. Jim, you've got small firms that do cybersecurity. You have mid-size, you got some big-ass motherfuckers, right? And sometimes the biggest motherfuckers eat up the littler ones, and they subsume them and buy them up. And
completely natural.
That's how business goes.
And, every now and then a little one will just pop up and kind of get their thing going and get some contracts.
A lot of them want to get gobbled up. The whole reason is to...
Really? Do you think, and you know what? That's the same in the cannabis industry, too.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone's not thinking what their 2 to 5 year plan is, then they're not reading the tea leaves, because, the federal legalization, I don't know that helps anyone that's in this industry. I think it'll be the super takeover, and
that's when shit gets interesting.
Yeah. But
we got to shut it down.
Stop the stigma.
Shut it down.
One event at a time.
Now we're going to have to do 2 at a time because they're just fucking propaganda.
When is the next one, Michael?
We're not ready to announce yet. Jamie, we're not...
December 23rd.
Oh, good.
I'm sure you'll get a lot of turnout for that. Hey, it might be nice dressing up. Who knows? But maybe December isn't the greatest month, but we'll definitely have to talk about it.
It's an interesting question. I think there's a big difference between BYOB and BYOC.
Yeah.
In actual having the sales there. You know what I mean? There's a big difference in these events, and I think that BYOC is almost like, it
was awesome.
No, I'm saying that there's a I don't know, we'll let it go. We'll talk about the next show. Licensing.
Yeah, licensing talk.
All right, everyone had enough now? All right, Planet Green Trees, 5:36. Run silent, run deep. We're calling it. Everyone be safe, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, you guys.
All right.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
When you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective. Take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knockout victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. ComornLaw.com.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
Hi, I'm attorney Michael Komorn of Komorn Law PLC, and you are watching Planet Green Trees.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
Before you plead, call me attorney Michael Komorn.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and you are watching Planet Green Trees, the original and #1 podcast in Michigan for all things cannabis and legal news.